The very thought of prison is terrifying enough to keep most people on the right side of the law. Being deprived of your freedom of movement and the ability to see your loved ones, destroying your career prospects, not to mention the risk of all kinds of attacks from hardened criminals. What could be worse? Perhaps only ending up in the most terrifying prison in the world, where other prisons seem like summer camps by comparison. Today, we'll tell you about the most brutal prisons in the world, places you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy. Black Dolphin, Russia. This high-security penal colony houses the most dangerous criminals from all over Russia, including cannibals, terrorists, and pedophiles. The inmates sleep with the lights on and are under constant video surveillance. And whenever they leave their cells under escort, a dog handler with a dog follows them. The cells are small, only 4.5 square meters. Moreover, the room is essentially a cage within a cage, as a steel grate separates the inmates from the windows and doors. Every time the prisoners walk through the corridors, their eyes are blindfolded, preventing them from memorizing the layout of the prison and reducing the chance of escape. The prisoners' hands are shackled behind their backs as they move, and their heads are kept lowered. This is known as the swallow pose. Inmates also take their walks with their hands shackled behind their backs. This strategy has proven effective, as there have been no escapes from the Black Dolphin. Santé Correctional Facility, France. The only prison remaining within Paris, it is known for its harsh, if not outright brutal, conditions for inmates. Many prisoners have taken their own lives while serving their sentences at Santé. For example, in 1999 alone, 124 inmates committed suicide. Violence in this prison is so widespread that inmates are allowed out of their cells for only 4 hours a day. There is a sad irony in the fact that the name Santé translates to health. It was named after the street located nearby. Bangkok Prison, Thailand. This correctional facility, located in Bangkok, is known as the Bangkok Hilton. This nickname became popular thanks to the Australian TV series in which Nicole Kidman played one of the main roles. The Thais themselves call this prison the Big Tiger, hinting that it devours its victims. It houses inmates sentenced to death or to long prison terms, so very few of them ever make it out of the jaws of the Big Tiger. Torture is practiced in Bangkok, and more than 25 convicts are kept in small cells measuring 6 by 4 meters. Prisoners are fed once a day, and they have to buy any additional food with money provided by relatives or friends. Due to overcrowded cells, lack of proper sanitary conditions, and poor nutrition, outbreaks of cholera, diphtheria, malaria, and other diseases frequently occur in the Big Tiger. La Sabaneta Prison, Venezuela. The world's most terrifying prisons are usually overcrowded, but even among them, La Sabaneta stands out. In a facility designed for only 700 people, more than 3,700 inmates are held. At the same time, the prison suffers from a severe staff shortage, with only one guard for every 150 inmates. There is no proper sanitation. Plastic bags are used as toilets. Inmates wash themselves from a communal bucket of water, and the drinking water teems with parasites and bacteria. Violence in La Sabaneta is as much a part of daily life as eating or sleeping. Rape and even beheadings are commonplace. Most inmates sleep in cramped hammocks, which are set up in narrow corridors and even on the prison roof. Only gang leaders with money and power can afford basic services such as medical care and a private cell with a fan and a television. La Modelo, Colombia. In this notorious prison, inmates have easy access to weapons and even grenades, and bloodshed is a common occurrence. One of the worst examples is the death of 25 inmates who were killed on April 27, 2000. In La Modelo, inmates are divided by political views into left-wing and right-wing groups. Accordingly, the prison itself is split into 2 sectors which are at war with each other. Moreover, in the right-wing sector, there is even a separate prison where they lock up those who have broken the rules. Muhanga Prison, Rwanda. This is the most overcrowded prison in the world. About 7,000 inmates are held in a facility designed for only 400 people. However, in a country like Rwanda, where 500,000 people were killed as a result of genocide, prison conditions are not a primary concern for most citizens. Many people held in Muhanga prison have no choice but to stand all day. And at night, they have to sleep tightly pressed against each other due to the chronic lack of space. The overcrowding is so severe that many inmates die from suffocation and disease before their release date. As in most of the world's worst prisons, there are virtually no sanitary or hygienic conditions in Muhanga. Because the floor is covered with a layer of filth, many inmates develop foot infections, which are treated in a drastic way by amputating toes or feet. Guantanamo. While other notorious prisons at least don't pretend to respect human rights, the world was shocked when it learned about the atrocities taking place in Guantanamo prison. There, prisoners are held with the status of combatants and are subject to trial by a special military commission. The majority of them are Muslims. Many of the detainees have not been formally charged with any crime. According to testimonies from the prisoners themselves, as well as human rights organizations, various forms of torture are used on inmates in Guantanamo, including sleep deprivation, prolonged exposure to loud music, beatings, and simulated drowning. ADX Florence, USA. Alcatraz, located on the island of the same name in San Francisco Bay, was once considered the most impregnable prison in the United States. It was there that the most notorious enemies of society were held, including, for example, Al Capone. However, even from there, successful escapes occurred, despite all the security measures and the dangerous cold currents in the sea. In 1963, Alcatraz ceased operations and eventually became one of the major tourist attractions. The most dangerous criminals were then dispersed among several facilities with maximum security levels. Most of them were sent to the brand new Marion facility in the state of Illinois. It was at Marion that some of the principles were first tested, which would later be perfected at ADX Florence. At first, the inmates were subjected to special psychological programs in an attempt to rehabilitate them, but eventually Marion implemented a system of control units, which meant that the most dangerous prisoners were kept in complete isolation for 23 out of the 24 hours in a day. But this did not help. On October 22, 1983, within a few hours of each other, two inmates affiliated with the Aryan Brotherhood stabbed two prison guards to death. This incident became the impetus for the creation of a new level of prison security. Previously, the highest level was maximum security, but after the incidents of 1983, a new level appeared, super maximum or supermax. The first supermax was Marion itself. However, the leadership of the Federal Bureau of Prisons recognized the need to build such a facility from scratch, specifically designed according to the new principles, rather than being forcibly adapted to them. They chose the area around the town of Florence, Colorado as the location. The choice of location was not accidental. Florence is located in Fremont County, roughly in the center of the rectangular state, about 160 kilometers from Denver, its capital and largest city. The economy of Fremont is largely based on servicing prisons. There are currently 15 correctional facilities of various classes located within the county, and those held in their cells make up as much as 20% of the county's population. The ADX Florence Supermax prison became part of a federal correctional complex, which also includes facilities with less strict regimes. It was built for $60 million, with the land for the facility purchased by the county itself, since the construction of another prison guaranteed the creation of about 900 new jobs for local residents. ADX Florence was put into operation on January 10, 1995, and after Marion was reorganized into a medium security facility in 2006, it remained the only one of its kind in the United States. This maximum security correctional prison is essentially a cleaner version of hell. And this description wasn't invented by journalists, but by a former prison warden. It is designed to hold the most dangerous criminals, many of whom are kept in solitary confinement around the clock in cells measuring 2.1 by 3.7 meters. They spend 23 hours a day in their cells, and the remaining hour in a separate room where they can walk or do physical exercises. The table, bed, and chair in the ADX Florence cells are made of solid concrete. However, they do have such luxuries as a toilet and a sink without a faucet. For good behavior, inmates can be transferred to a cell with a television, radio, and a mirror made of polished steel bolted to the wall. The prison located in the Syrian city of Tadmor has a reputation as one of the worst prisons in the world. Cruel treatment, torture, and inhumane conditions within the walls of this prison have made it infamous around the world. The most shocking incident at Tadmor prison occurred on June 27, 1980, when, on the orders of military official Rifat al-Assad, soldiers killed approximately 500 prisoners at once. This was an act of revenge for an assassination attempt by the Muslim Brotherhood on Syrian President Hafez al-Assad. Since the 1980s, not only military personnel but also other criminals began to be imprisoned there. In the 1980s, thousands of criminal and political prisoners were held in the prison. Tadmor prison was notorious for its brutal regime. Prisoners were often subjected to brutal torture which frequently led to death. In order to force confessions during interrogations, guards would often beat prisoners with metal pipes, cables, whips, lashes, and wooden boards. Sometimes guards would inject Muslim prisoners with heavy drugs, and at other times they would take them out into the yard with a plastic bag over their heads and then beat them to death with axes. There is evidence that this prison had a special inner courtyard that the staff used as a dumping ground for the bodies of murdered inmates. In order to resist the cruelty and violence, some inmates of Tadmor prison decided to band together and form their own organization, but the prison staff suppressed these attempts. After numerous complaints and accusations against prison staff for cruel treatment and the use of torture, Tadmor prison was closed in 2001. However, since 2011, it was reopened. The prison held various inmates, including political prisoners, especially dangerous criminals, deserters, and military personnel involved in criminal offenses. Clashes between inmates often resulted in a large number of casualties. Each year, more than 20 people died in this prison, and many inmates lost their sanity. Syrian poet Faraj Bayraktar, who spent 5 years in Tadmor prison, described it as a kingdom of death and madness. Carandiru, Brazil. Located near the Brazilian metropolis of São Paulo, Carandiru prison was closed back in 2002. Nevertheless, it still holds the record for the harshest conditions and the most unsuitable living environment. Built in 1920, the prison was hardly ever renovated during its 80 years of existence and was a grim complex of brick and concrete with primitive facilities and appalling unsanitary conditions. Only someone who has personally been through this hell could accurately describe life in Carandiru. At any given time, the prison could house between 7,500 to 10,000 inmates. And for this entire army of criminals, there were fewer than 1,000 staff members. The institution's employees worked in 4 shifts, so at best, there were no more than 250 wardens and guards present in the prison at the same time. For the most part, the inmates were left to fend for themselves. Violence, drug addiction, and depravity thrived in the cells of Carandiru. Every 5th prisoner was HIV positive. At the same time, medical care in the prison was extremely primitive. Dozens of Carandiru inmates died from diseases, wounds sustained in conflicts with cellmates, and also by committing suicide. Very often, anesthesia was ignored during surgeries in the prison hospital. And given the filth that reigned in the cell blocks, surviving a serious illness was extremely difficult. This horrific Brazilian prison holds yet another grim record. In 1992, the bloodiest prison riot in Brazil's history took place here. It all started with a fight between 2 inmates from rival criminal gangs and escalated into a full-scale uprising, which prison guards and police suppressed using firearms. During the operation to quell the unrest, 111 inmates were shot dead. Camp 22, North Korea. Inside Camp 22, there are approximately 50,000 prisoners. Most of them have been sentenced to life imprisonment for criticizing the North Korean government. What is even more shocking is that Camp 22 is just one of 30 such concentration camps operating in North Korea. The conditions in the world's most terrifying prison are clearly made to be as horrific as possible. Malnutrition is the norm, and all prisoners are required to work and are essentially slaves of the state, performing hard physical labor for free. There are even reports that human experimentation is practiced in North Korea's political prison camps. In one of the official UN reports on human rights violations in the DPRK, the situation with the camps in the country was compared to the crimes of the Nazis in Germany during World War II. The camp was built back in the mid-1960s. Later, its area was expanded to 225 square kilometers. The camp was surrounded by barbed wire, which was electrified with 3 kilovolts. More than 1,000 guards armed with automatic rifles, hand grenades, and dogs watched over the prisoners. In 1990, the camp held about 50,000 inmates. Not a single prisoner from Hueron ever left the camp alive. Only those sentenced to life imprisonment were brought here. In Hueron, not only the convicted themselves live, but also their family members. In North Korea, the relatives of a convict are considered just as much criminals as the convict himself. The male prisoners worked in the coal mine, while their wives and children lived in one of the 4 agricultural settlements within the camp and worked in the fields. A former camp guard named An Myung-chol described the conditions in the camp as extremely harsh and life-threatening. His first visit to the camp shocked him. The prisoners looked like walking skeletons dressed in tattered rags. Nearly 1 in 3 of them had injuries caused by beatings from the guards. According to An Myung-chol, about 2,000 prisoners were missing limbs. Even prisoners who moved around on crutches were forced to work. The camp ration consisted of 180 grams of corn without any other vegetables, let alone meat. Each prisoner was allotted 2 such rations per day. Every year, between 1,500 and 2,000 people died of hunger in the camp. Every year, new prisoners were brought in to take their place. Starting from the age of 6, the children of prisoners were required to work harvesting vegetables and rice alongside their mothers. Many of these children died of hunger before even reaching the age of 10. Prisoners who were sent to the concentration camp without their families lived in barracks with 100 people in a single room. As a reward for good work, families were allowed to live together in one room or a small house without running water. The workday in the camp began at 5 in the morning and ended at 8 in the evening. After work, re-education sessions were held. The only day off for the prisoners was New Year's Day. The camp guards treated the prisoners as class enemies who should be eliminated as soon as possible. Therefore, any offense or disobedience was punishable by death. Another former guard of colony number 22 named Kwang recounted that he was once ordered to execute 31 people at once because one of the prisoners had tried to escape. According to Kwang, public executions were held in the camp every week during the 1980s. In the 1990s, executions began to be carried out in secret from the other prisoners. Lastly, these prisons are the height of inhumanity operating outside of any rules. This is connected to the people who inhabit them. Such methods of subduing people send chills down the spine and also increase the motivation not to break the law. Which of these prisons do you think is the worst? Write your answer in the comments. And as always, this was Pancake with you, wishing everyone a good mood and fair winds. See you soon.